Okay, in this chapter we're just going to wrap up any little loose ends that we may have on our UV Unwrap, which you can see in front of us here. And what I've done to the model is I've attached it all together again, and I'm just going to look over it for any little problems. Um, I think, overall it's working really well. You've got some really good UVs here. The staircase is working great. The back of the house is working fine. You can see we've got a pretty consistent scale between everything. And you can see the side of the building here has a slightly different scale to this element here, so you could try scaling down this bitmap just to make those match up. And that would be another pass that you could do. You could just go through everything and try and make sure that each particular bitmap matches up with the ones that adjoin it, and make sure you've got the same kind of layout going on there. So that's something you could do. There is one area which could cause a problem, and it isn't necessarily evident, and I'll just show you it here. If I just hide the chimney, there's this little rectangle here, and that could cause problems with texturing. If there's any kind of filtering going on, that could mean that the texture from here smears into this area and causes a problem. So probably what we want to do is we want to get this little polygon to match up with the rest of the UVs around it. So let's just do that. Just select the model, and we'll just hide the other elements actually while I'm at it. Let's just hide the support and the stairs, and that just leaves us with the main model. Just add an unwrap modifier to it. We'll open the unwrapper. Just quickly have a look at the UVs and how they've all come out. You can see they're all in UV space 0 to 1. They're all sitting nicely inside that area. Obviously they're overlapping, but what I've done is I've actually assigned IDs to these various elements before I joined it all together again. So we can still filter them out using IDs, as you can see. So we can still see the different bitmaps that we've actually arranged everything out into just by using these IDs. So as you can see, the ID filtering feature is very useful. But we want to be able to see everything for now. So let's find out what these faces are down here. These faces are the glass, as you can see in these large windows here. They don't actually need UVs because they're using reflection maps. So we've decided that they're not actually needing UVs, so that's fine. They can be out here. And let's have a look at this little face is here. Again, that's glass. That fits in the door. So again, we don't need UVs. And we've got this one face here. And if we have a look around, we can see that that's the face that we need to fit into that gap there. So if we filter using IDs to make this a little bit clearer, they're actually, this face and the area that it needs to fit into are in different ID sets, so we can't really filter using that option. So we'll just try and work things out in the mesh. You can see, I can roughly see that this is the top of the roof. I think it's ID set number 2, I believe. Yeah, there you go. So you can see that's the top of the roof for the tower, and there's the hole we need to fit it into. So we'll just display all IDs again. So we just need to get it into this little spot here. So let me just put the corner. Oops, let me just undo that selection. Just need to move this here. Zoom right in so we can see what we're doing. Put that into position. And just move that into place. That's great. And now I can hold down control, just do a uniform scale, just make it a little bit smaller, and then we'll just scale it up so it fits nicely into that position, and that's pretty good, I think. That's great. I think that's a good enough match, to be honest. If we have a look here in the viewport, you can see that the texels around there shouldn't really cause any real problems. And that's it really. We can just collapse that back down again to bake in that change. We've now fixed that little problem here, and that's it really for our mesh. So in the next section, what we really need to do is apply a different type of mapping, and that will allow us to actually bake in some lighting into our model, and that's using the render to texture tool. So let's move on and have a look at that now. One of the features of 3ds Max is the ability to actually bake out a render into textures that can be used later to produce real-time effects in video games, and if you want to also, in film and TV special effects work. Now that particular feature needs something to unwrap the entire model so that there are no overlapping faces anywhere. In a normal UV space, you'll have lots and lots of UVs overlapping each other, and that's okay because you'll have lots of different bitmaps using those UVs. But in this case, the model is actually broken down into very simple elements. We've got the main bulk of the house, we've got the stairs, and we've got the chimney. And each one of those has ambient occlusion maps. And you can see the ambient occlusion map here for the house. You might be able to recognize some of the elements. We've got things like the side of the building here. You can actually see the imprint of the stairs here causing occlusion. We've got the doorway here, and you can see we've got the supports here which have been attached to the house for this weld. And you can see we've got the side of the building here, the front of the tower, and so on and so forth. So I actually unwrapped this manually, and you don't have to do that because the tool is actually has its own unwrapper built in, and it just uses the standard tool, uses its own values, and then unwraps the UVs for you. But let's say you wanted to unwrap it for a game engine, and this was something which was going to take place external to Max, then you can always do it manually in Max. So I'm just going to show you very quickly how to do that here. And as I said, this is the map which was used for the main building. This is the map for the stairs. As you can see, it's got lots and lots of different elements there, and that's because you've got, you've got the side of the stairs, and then you've got all the steps. You can see all these here, and then you've got the little triangles which fit into the edge of each step. So you can see you've got lots and lots of elements there, and you really wouldn't want to lay this all out by hand manually. It would take a very, very long time. And finally, we've got the very small map which is used for the chimney, and you can see it's broken that down into very small elements. In fact, it's pretty much in most cases, face by face. You've got the side of the pipe there coming out the bottom, and you've got the plates at the top. You can see the underside of the main cylinder is actually shadowed there. It's occluding, and the top half isn't. So you can see it does add some quite nice shading to the model. So let's go back into Max and find out how we use this particular tool. So up until now we've been using channel 1 when using the UV editor, but the editor can access any of the channels in Max, and as I said earlier in the DVD, there are 100. So let's use channel 5. It doesn't really matter which channel you use, but we'll use channel 5 to store a new set of UVs in, which will be used by the render to texture tool. And we'll do that for the main building, the stairs, and for the chimney. So we've got the main building selected here. We'll add an unwrap, and we've got map channel 1, which is the default. We'll just type in 5 and press enter. And it says OK to switch to new map channel data. Changes made within the UV modifier will be lost. I'll say yes. And the reason why I did that was because every time I hit the spinner, it'll ask me the same question. So you really don't want to spin your way up through the channels. You just want to do a quick type in and answer that question once. We'll just say yes about that. And if we look at the model, you'll see we've actually got some UVs, which I've already done. If I edit that, you can see there's all the UVs laid out. But we'll just pretend that they don't exist, and I'll show you how you can do that yourself. Select all of the faces. So we'll select all the faces in the mesh, and go up to mapping, flatten mapping. We're familiar pretty much with this tool. And we can try using the default value of 45 degrees. So let's give that a try. And this will obviously flatten everything and pack it in one go. So we'll just OK that. And this is what we've got by default. You can see we've got quite a lot of space left around here, which isn't very efficient. So let's try putting the value up and see what we get. Just OK that. You can see it actually creeped up there, and it started using more of the area. So let's try doing that again. We'll just put the value down and see what we get. Not much of a change really, so let's try once more, and we'll just put it up to just under 90 degrees. We don't want to go over 90 because that doesn't really make any sense with face angles, because pretty much anything over 90 is going to be everything really. So we'll just OK that, see what we get. It's not really making that much of a difference now. So you can see we've reached pretty much a plateau in terms of filling out the area here. You can see we've got maybe a little bit more space. So it might be possible to just go down here, drag this down here a little bit, and to fill in this area maybe, and in that way make the most efficient use. And that's pretty much it for that particular tool. The render to texture tool will take that and use that, and it's not obviously human paintable, but it is usable by the rendering system. So that would be it for the main part of the building. We could then unhide the stairs. We can do the same thing there with the stairs. We just need to come out of face mode for the main building. Add an unwrap modifier. Change it to channel 5. Yes, that's fine. Go in and edit. And you can see again we've got existing UVs, but the same thing again, we can just redo this as many times as we want. Mapping, flatten mapping. Let's try 45 degrees. And you can see that's broken that up pretty well, pretty much like we had already. If you didn't like the way this was done, you could obviously scale things up and maybe make a little bit more use of the space in there. And you can do that for each of the elements, and then you can then pass that on to the unwrap tool. So let's skip on and have a look at the unwrap tool now and just see how those are used. Rendering, we go to render to texture, and you'll see that the default option is to use an automatic unwrap, and you can see it's using this channel, which is free. Using this particular option, it'll actually apply a UV unwrap modifier to each object that you have selected that you want to render, and it'll automatically unwrap each one of them using default values. If you've already done it yourself and you know it's all looking very cool, you can tell it to use existing channels, and it looks at the object and it works out which channels are available, and in this case you've got 5, 1 and 5. 1 would produce a complete mess because of all of the overlapping UVs you have there, so we would have to use 5. You can then set up these values down here, which is a whole world unto itself, and I'd recommend looking at the help file for how to use this particular tool. And using this tool then you can bake out ambient occlusion, you can bake out your diffuse, and so on and so forth, and you can use those in a real-time engine. So that's it for this chapter, and in fact pretty much for this DVD. Let's move on into the next chapter now, where we'll recap everything that we've covered in the chapters so far.